Something really interesting is happening across Africa right now. There's this quiet but incredibly powerful shift going on. We're seeing nations move away from playing a game with rules set by others to actually writing their own economic playbook. So let's get right into it and break down what's happening.
So, the big question, right, is how? How exactly is the continent rewriting these global economic rules? And look, it's not just one thing. We're talking about a whole series of really bold, really strategic moves that are changing the game.
To really get a grip on this, we're going to look at 3 different stories. One from Ethiopia, one from Botswana, and then a wider look at a new trade boom. And when you put them all together, they point to this one massive trend, a continent that's decisively taking control of its own economic destiny.
All right, first up, we've got what you could literally call a power play. This story is all about Ethiopia and one of the most ambitious infrastructure projects on the entire continent, the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, or GERD for short.
And if you want to understand just how huge this is, just look at the price tag. We're talking about nearly $5 billion spent over 14 years of construction. I mean, this isn't just a dam, it's a massive, massive bet on the country's future.
So what exactly does $5 billion get you? Well, it's basically a 4-part strategy. The dam is going to power Ethiopia's industrial dreams, and it needs to. It has to meet a 40% jump in energy demand every single year. It's also a cash cow, right? It's set to bring in up to $1 billion a year just from selling electricity to its neighbors. And here's a really modern twist for you. It's becoming a hotspot for Bitcoin miners, mostly from China who need tons of cheap power. All that money then gets plowed back into the country, helping to finally bring electricity to rural communities.
But, of course, a project this big, it's not without some major controversy. For Ethiopia, this dam is everything. It's a national milestone, a symbol of growth. But then you look downstream, and for countries like Egypt and Sudan, who rely completely on the Nile River, they see it as a huge threat. They're worried it could cut their water supply and even cause droughts. And even after years of talks, they still haven't reached a solid agreement, which has created a ton of geopolitical tension in the region.
Okay, let's switch gears to our second story, and you'll see how this theme continues. We're moving from energy to another incredibly valuable resource, diamonds. And in this case, Botswana is making a really bold play for what it calls diamond sovereignty.
Okay, to really get what Botswana is doing, you have to understand this one crucial fact. For them, diamonds aren't just a luxury item, they are the absolute foundation of the country's economy. Think about it. They make up 80% of all exports and pay for 1/3 of the entire government's budget. The country's health literally depends on this one thing.
And that's exactly why Botswana is making such a huge move. They're basically saying, we're done being the junior partner. They're not just asking for a bigger piece of the profits anymore. They're trying to take over the whole operation. The plan is to go from being a 15% shareholder in the diamond giant De Beers to owning a majority stake of over 50%.
And President Duma Boko, he doesn't mince words. He says this is all about economic sovereignty. His point is, hey, we produce 70% of De Beers natural diamonds, so we should have the final say on where the industry is headed, especially when it comes to marketing and managing the business.
So what about the big threat from lab-grown diamonds? The synthetic ones. Well, President Boko is completely unfazed. He's showing total confidence in the lasting appeal of natural stones with this one killer line. There's no way in which a fake can outshine the real.
Now, a move this big, obviously it's going to cost a lot of money. So they're already putting together a serious financial team. They're talking to Oman's Sovereign Wealth Fund. That's a huge state-owned investment fund. And they're also talking to investors from Qatar. They're even joining forces with Angola, another big diamond producer, to build a powerful group to get this deal across the finish line.
All right, for our third and final story, we're going to zoom out a bit. We're going to look at how major global conflicts over trade are actually, and kind of unexpectedly, opening up brand new doors and redrawing the commercial map for the entire continent.
It's kind of a paradox, really. The big tariff war between the US and China, which was supposed to slow things down, has had this totally unintended consequence. It's actually sped up trade between emerging economies, something people are calling the South-South trade boom.
Just look at South Africa's car market, for example. The top 2 countries they're importing cars from, it's not the usual suspects from Europe or America anymore. It's India and China. And get this, companies like India's Mahindra are even assembling their popular Baki trucks right there in Durban for the local market.
And it's not just happening with cars. The CEO of Jumia, that's Africa's biggest e-commerce platform, Francis Dufay, he puts it very simply. He says the trade war is directly helping them get more products to sell in Africa, all because Chinese companies are looking for new customers.
So what's happening is, as Chinese companies look for markets outside the US, they're sending way more goods to Africa. And this flood of new products, it's a huge boost for online stores like Jumia, who say their events for bringing on new Chinese sellers are more popular than they've ever been.
Okay, so we've looked at these three stories: a dam, diamonds, and global trade. So what does this new playbook actually look like when you put it all together? What are the key moves we're seeing?
Well, it really comes down to three main strategies. First, there's what we're calling the power play. That's Ethiopia, securing its own energy to power its own industries. Second, we saw the sovereignty play in Botswana, taking direct majority control over their most important natural resource. And finally, we're seeing the alliance play happening across the continent as countries build new, powerful trade relationships with other nations in the global south, basically turning global problems into local opportunities.
What all of this really signals is a fundamental shift in thinking, from just being a player in someone else's game to actually writing the rules and leading. And that leaves us with one last, really fascinating question to think about. As Africa continues to write its own rules, who's going to thrive in the new global economy that's starting to take shape?